I was sipping my morning coffee, the steam curling up like lazy ghosts when he said it. My brother, smug, leaning against the counter like he owned the kitchen. Honestly, you sot are overpaid. I laughed. A short, nervous laugh. Half very funny, I said, trying to shake it off. He didn't smile. He never smiled when he meant to cut deep. No, seriously, he said, voice flat. You make more than you deserve. I mean, look at what you actually do. I froze mid-sip. Coffee burned my tongue. I coughed. Excuse me? You heard me, he said, smirking now, that look, the one that says I know exactly what I'm doing, and I enjoy it. I set the mug down. Are you kidding me? I said not. I don't get it, he shrugged, like he was shrugging off my entire life. You stir good, sure, but overpaid. I laughed again. Too loud this time. Nervous. Forced my stomach twisted. Wow. Okay. Real supportive brother moment, thanks. He tilted his head, unimpressed. I stepped, just being honest. Honest, right. I replayed it over and over in my mind, each replay twisting the knife. The words weren't just words, they were judgment, mockery, condescension. He was saying, you don't deserve this. I tried to let it go. I really did. I moved on to emails, work calls, scrolling through my phone, but his words clawed at me. Every laugh at a coworker's joke, every compliment I'd received for months, suddenly felt hollow. You steer overpaid. Even typing it now, I can feel it, lodged in my chest like a stone. By lunch, I was replaying it like a broken record. I imagined confrontations, debates, arguments. I pictured him denying it, smirking, and me walking out victorious. And then, a flicker of anger. Hot, burning, ugly. I didn't just want to argue, I wanted him to feel it. I caught myself staring at the ceiling that night, fingers tracing the rim of my coffee mug, thinking, you think I don't work hard? You think I don't earn this? He didn't know the nights I stayed up late, the deals I negotiated, the hours I sacrificed. He didn't see the weight of expectations, the grind, the sleepless stress. All he saw was a paycheck, and he reduced me to that. I clenched my fists. My knuckles went white. I couldn't let it go. Not this time. Not him. By the time the clock ticked past midnight, a plan started forming in my mind, not a violent plan, not a petty one. Something sharp, precise, something that would make him think before ever belittling me again. I pictured his smug face, that smug little smirk. I imagined him realizing too late that words can cut, but consequences can slice even deeper. The anger simmered, hot, quiet, unstoppable. I whispered to the empty kitchen, "You stir going to regret this. You have no idea." And in that moment I knew this wasn't just about money, it was about respect, about worth, about showing him that undermining me wasn't an option. I went to bed that night with the taste of coffee still on my tongue, but also the taste of resolve. Tomorrow, I thought, I start. Tomorrow I make sure he feels just how wrong he was. And I won't stop until he does. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not just the comment. Not just this morning. I couldn't shake the way he said it. The smirk. The judgment. It dragged me back. Back to the living room. Back to my father's voice booming over my homework. "You say overambitious. You know Dad would say. You bite off more than you can chew." I sucked glance at my brother. He supped grin. "Practical," Dad would say. "Smart knows his limits." Limits. That word haunted me. Every childhood memory, every achievement I thought mattered, twisted itself into some kind of crime. Lucky. Dad once called me. "You such just lucky." I wasn't lucky. I was tired, exhausted, working while everyone else slept. Staying up late when my brother went out with friends, sacrificing nights, weekends, birthdays. I learned early that praise wasn't coming for me, only for him. And now he sits across from me, smug, acting like nothing ever happened. Overpaid, he says. Like it's harmless. Like he isn't digging into the same old wound my father carved decades ago. I close my eyes. I see it all. The classroom applause I didn't hear, the trophies that gathered dust in the corner, the whispered good jobs that were never mine. I remember the science fair. I worked for weeks, nights spent in the garage, experiments failing, my hands scraped and stained. I presented my project, teachers nodded, parents smiled, and Dad? He barely looked. Then he ruffled my brother Sep's hair. Now that Sep's practical thinking. I wanted to scream. I did scream. Inside, no one heard. No one cared. You always get everything handed to you, Dad once told me during dinner. Your brother? He earns it. I sat there. Knife-sharp resentment growing. I smiled. Pretended it didn't hurt. But the pain burrowed in. Silent. Relentless. That day's memories surged forward. School awards. Overlooked essays. Late nights finishing projects he'd bragged about later. Each flashback a brick. Building a wall of quiet fury. I whispered to myself. It's Step's always been him. Hasn't stepped it. From the start. And then the ache hit. Heart twisting. Chest tightening. I hated him. I hated them all. Loved them, but hated them too. Family should protect. But ours. It built invisible chains. I thought about the birthday parties I organized myself. Presents I made with trembling hands, only to have Dad compliment my brother on a store-bought tie. You're lucky, he said again, smiling at my brother like I didn't exist. And there it was, the realization. This wasn't new. This wasn't isolated. It was a pattern. A long, quiet, painful pattern. I felt the anger coiling tighter, no longer helpless. No longer just hurt. It was power. Not loud power. Not angry shouting. But the kind that simmers under skin, ready to explode in precision. I promised myself silently one day, he will regret underestimating me. I see the nights I stayed up. Notebooks scattered. Projects half finished while he went out. I see the college applications I agonized over. Scholarships I earned alone. And him, smiling, praised for the bare minimum. You don't get it, I whisper to the dark room. You never got it. But now I do. And I see the leverage. The moments I've ignored, the skills I've honed while they laughed at my ambition, they are mine, all mine. Memories twist into strategy, pain becomes fuel. Every slight, every dismissive comment, every sideways glance, they're building blocks, my foundation, my revenge, my truth. I pick up my phone, scroll through old emails, old messages, notes to myself. Plans I never shared, opportunities I quietly seized. Every little success, ignored by them, now feels like ammunition. Lucky, they called me. But luck has nothing to do with it. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every ignored compliment, it adds up. And one day they'll see. I lean back, close my eyes, breath deep. The resentment isn't just anger anymore. It's resolve. Cold, steady, unavoidable. He thinks he knows me. He thinks he can measure my worth with a paycheck. A casual insult. A smirk. He has no idea. And that saps the beauty of it. One day he'll realize everything he dismissed as overambitious or lucky was carefully, silently, building toward me. Toward the moment he finally understands what underestimating me costs. I let the memories wash over me, bitter and raw. I let the heartache settle. I let the quiet, simmering power root deep. Because revenge isn't loud. Not yet, but it's coming. And when it does, he'll remember every single time he made me feel small. Every single time. I started watching him. Quietly, patiently, like a predator studying prey. Not that I wanted to hurt him physically yet, I wanted to understand. His routines, his pride, his little habits that revealed more than he thought. He checked his email obsessively, thumb hovering over the inbox like it contained the secrets of the universe. Always first in the office. Always nodding with satisfaction when someone asked for his advice. The way he polished his desk every morning like it reflected his soul. Everything screamed control, obsession, greed. And then it hit me. What if I could turn that obsession against him? What if his love for status, for numbers, for proving himself smarter than everyone, became the thing that undid him? I felt a thrill crawl up my spine. Dangerous. Electric. I knew I couldn't do it alone. Family is tangled, too close, too messy. I needed someone outside the web, someone clever, subtle, who understood power without cruelty. I thought of Liam, my coworker, quiet, observant, smart, always 3 steps ahead. He'd joked about ethical revenge once over lunch, never cruel, always clever. I leaned close in the break room, whispering like it was a conspiracy. I need your help. Liam raised an eyebrow. Help with what? I studied him for a moment, letting the tension stretch. Exposing hypocrisy, I said finally, quietly, legally, but in a way he still feel, deeply. He smirked. That tiny smirk of approval. I like where this is going. Go on. I took a breath. He's Sep's obsessed with his pay, with appearances, the way he flaunts success. Everyone admires him, or thinks they do. I want to show the truth. Let him see what he really is, and make him squirm. Liam leaned back. And you stir talking legal, right? Absolutely, I said, eyes flashing. I want him exposed, not jailed. I want karma, subtle, perfect, invisible to the world except him. He nodded slowly. Yusef got my attention, but how do we get his info without triggering alarms? I smiled. That smile. The one that had taken years to perfect. We work smart, carefully. Access what SIP's public, what SIP's inside HR protocols. Nothing illegal, but enough to make him sweat. Enough to prove he's SIP's, human, flawed, vulnerable. Liam chuckled softly. You stir calculating. I still give you that. I SIP had practice. I muttered. Years of practice. Being ignored, underestimated. Being told I was lucky. Overambitious. I SIP studied him, his patterns, his weaknesses. I know how he moves, how he reacts. And now, I control the board. There was a pause. Just us. Quiet hum of the office around us. My heart pounded like a drum, dangerous, exhilarating. So Liam said finally, we do this step by step. You keep him comfortable, unsuspecting. I pull data, legally, quietly. We compile. And then, I let my eyes linger on the fluorescent ceiling tiles. Then he realizes, not in front of anyone else, just him, that he SIP's been greedy, arrogant, self-righteous, all while thinking he was untouchable. You're enjoying this, Liam said, shaking his head. I laughed, low, dry. You have no idea. For the first time in years, I felt it. Control, power, the sick, delicious certainty that I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning, strategizing, moving my pieces across the board with precision. I pictured his face when the first domino fell. Confusion, pride cracking, panic, that little smirk wiped clean, replaced with disbelief. This will be beautiful, I whispered. Liam leaned in. What SIP's our first move? I pulled out my laptop, opened the folders I had organized for weeks. We start by mapping his habits. Hours, meetings, approvals, every little action. Then we cross-reference publicly accessible data, legal loopholes, internal reports that show inconsistencies. He whistled softly. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? Longer than I stepped like to admit, I said. Every slight, every casual insult, every smirk he steps thrown at me, it steps all been data. Fuel. Now it steps time to convert it into action. Liam nodded, intrigued. And you SIP sure you want to do this? I leaned back in my chair, let my mind wander briefly over every moment that led me here, my father's favoritism, my brother's smug superiority, all those years of being dismissed, mocked, underestimated, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every time I bit my tongue, it all led to this. Yes, I said finally. I want this, not out of spite, not out of rage, out of necessity, out of justice, out of showing him who I really am. Liam smiled faintly. I think we are going to make a pretty scary team. I hope he's scared, I said, voice low, firm. Not anyone else. Just him. Let him feel for a moment what it steps like to be underestimated. Overlooked, judged unfairly. It steps been my reality for years. Now it steps his turn. I closed my laptop slowly. Heart still pounding. The thrill didn't fade. It grew, hungry, quiet, patient. I had control. For the first time in years the balance shifted, and I would not let it go until he learned the cost of his arrogance. Step by step, piece by piece, the plan was forming. And nothing would stop me. I needed details. Exact numbers. Receipts, tiny gaps he thought no one noticed. Late nights became my allies. The office emptied. Lights dimmed and I stayed, eyes fixed on the glow of my laptop screen. Are you still here? Liam asked from the doorway. I didn't turn. Yes. And we sat her close. He raised an eyebrow. Close to what? Another spreadsheet. I let a small smile slip. Not just a spreadsheet, a revelation, his history. Pay stubs, bonuses, hidden perks, all of it, step by step. You're obsessed, Liam said, voice low, almost admiring. Focused, I corrected. Obsession implies emotion. This is precision. The first document appeared, a simple PDF from HR archives. My stomach twisted. My heart pounded. A bonus slipped through cracks. A perk tucked into an annual report. My brother had built his pride on a lie, a carefully constructed facade of success. I whispered to the empty office. You really thought I wouldn't see? Each new file was a mix of shock and satisfaction. Numbers he bragged about, small, insignificant to the world, but now in my hands they were ammunition. Evidence of arrogance, of greed, of self-delusion. Look at this, I said, pointing at my screen. He claimed only minor allowances, travel, meals. But here, I scrolled slowly, letting it sink in, housing health perks, stock options, bonuses no one knows about. Liam leaned over my shoulder. He seps more than he lets on. Yes, I breathed, voice tight. And that said overpaid sep jab this morning. Nothing compared to the irony I said I'm about to serve him. Hours passed, coffee cups stacked, fingers cramped, but I didn't stop. I traced the timeline back to every increment, every approval he signed. I cross-checked it against emails, reports, subtle memos, every contradiction, every hidden benefit. It all added up. Are you sure we're not crossing a line? Liam asked quietly. I shook my head. We solder walking the legal edge. Nothing illegal, but enough to sting. Enough for him to see the truth, to feel the weight of what he's been hiding. The thrill was sharper than anger, colder than hate. Power coursed through me like ice water. Invisible, untouchable, perfect. I paused, thinking about his smirk this morning, the way he'd leaned back like he'd won some invisible game. And now, the board was flipped. Every move I made he wouldn't see coming. I tapped a few keys. This one, I said, showing Liam another document. Look, his bonus last quarter. Claimed minimal effort. Reality, he approved deals that weren't effed his. Took credit he didn't stead earn, and this stock options hidden under a subsidiary. No one knew, except me now. Liam whistled softly. He built a castle out of smoke. And I have the matches, I said, lips tight. I leaned back, letting the quiet hum of the office fill the space. Each click, each file opened, each receipt scanned was a beat in my heart, a drum of invisible control. Patience was key. One misstep, and it would all collapse. One wrong move, and the plan would crumble before it even began. I thought about the mornings he mocked my luck, the nights he didn't notice my effort, every casual insult, every sideways glance, all of it laid bare now, and I was calm, patient, methodical. This is going to work, I whispered, almost to myself. Liam glanced at me. You make it sound inevitable. I smiled faintly. It is because I built it piece by piece. Quietly. No one sees the work. No one suspects, but the impact, he one forget. Another email pinged. Internal audit request. I froze, scanned it, relaxed. Nothing harmful, routine, but it reminded me how fragile this game was. One wrong click, one accidental alert. Everything gone. I whispered a silent promise. Not today, not now. I control this. Hours slipped into the night. The office emptied. My reflection stared back at me from the blackened windows. Eyes dark, focused, calculating. I barely recognized myself, and yet, I did. For the first time, I felt power. Quiet, invisible, absolute. I imagined him tomorrow, walking into the office, smug, proud, unaware. And me, ready with proof, ready with the truth, ready to expose the irony of his arrogance. Do you feel it? Liam asked, voice low. The tension? I nodded. Every step, every detail, every piece, it steps like holding lightning in my hands. One flick, and it still strike. He smirked, careful. Lightning burns. I still take the burn, I said, because it's worth it. For the first time in years I not the one small and overlooked. I the one invisible, untouchable, moving pieces no one notices until it too late. Another file, another layer, bonus structure from 3 years ago, travel expenses, health reimbursements. I traced his approvals, his hidden perks, the way he inflated minor achievements. I whispered, You think you said you're clever? I see everything. The clock struck midnight. I leaned back, fingers stiff, heart racing. The thrill didn't fade. It spread, quiet satisfaction, deep and cold. I thought of his smirk again, the words overpaid echoing in my mind. I let it sink. One day he'll realize the irony. He'll feel the sting, and it will come from the quietest, sharpest place possible, me. I closed the laptop slowly, savoring the invisible power, the meticulous patience, the thrill of control, every piece gathered, every number verified, every secret uncovered. The plan was no longer just an idea, it was a living, breathing entity, and I was its heartbeat. Tomorrow, I thought, I start the next move. And he once did see it coming. I held the envelope in my hand, feeling the weight of it, not heavy in mass, but heavy in intent. The first move, the first strike. He didn't know, not yet, and that made it perfect. I walked into the office, calm, controlled, every step measured. I saw him across the room, head cocked, phone in hand, looking smug as usual. I leaned against the counter near him, pretending to check an email. Hey, did you see the latest payroll update? I asked casually. He looked up, eyes narrowing. Payroll? No. Why? I shrugged, innocently. Just curious. Some numbers looked odd, but never mind. He chuckled, a little too easily. Odd? Who checks other people's SIPs pay? I smiled faintly. Nobody, just curiosity. I could see it then. The first flicker, the twitch behind his eyes. He tried to laugh it off, to brush it away like it was nothing. Curiosity killed the cat, he said, voice tight. I let the silence linger, just long enough for him to feel it, that little twist of unease. Later at the break room, I passed a copy of a pay stub, cleverly anonymized, nothing traceable back to me, but just enough for him to catch whispers. A shared glance, a double take, the seed planted. I watched. His smirk faltered, tiny cracks appeared, barely noticeable, but they were there. He tapped his pen nervously, glanced around, leaned back in his chair trying to act indifferent. Did you hear about the bonuses? Someone whispered nearby. He stiffened, pretended not to hear, but I saw the panic, the flicker of doubt. I kept my expression neutral, calm, innocent, and every tiny reaction from him fueled something deep inside me. Triumph, satisfaction, vindication. During lunch, I joined a conversation about annual reviews. I casually dropped a phrase I knew would catch him off guard. I never realized how inconsistent some reports could be, I said, voice casual. Funny how numbers sometimes tell a different story than appearances. His fork paused midair, eyes darted. The corners of his mouth twitched. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Numbers, huh? Always tricky. I smiled faintly, letting it linger, just enough for him to feel observed, vulnerable, judged. Back at my desk, I watched him. Every glance, every shuffle of papers, every phone check, it all screamed tension. He was trying to maintain the facade, the confidence he wore like armor, but it was cracking. My heart raced, not from fear, not from anger, from the thrill of seeing him squirm in a world where he thought he was untouchable, where he thought no one could see behind the mask. I whispered to myself, almost reverently, this is only the beginning. He stopped by my desk later, leaning casually, trying to appear relaxed. Hey, you okay? Seemed distant today. I looked up, calm, just thinking about numbers. Funny how a small slip can reveal so much. His eyes flicked down, then back to mine. I could see it, the doubt, the subtle panic. He forced a laugh. Yeah, numbers never lie, right? Sometimes, I said softly, letting my words hang like smoke. Numbers tell more than people want to admit. He nodded too quickly, walked away. I watched his steps, measured, careful, every move betrayed the shift. He felt it, and I felt the rush of control. By evening, whispers had spread, just tiny murmurs, nothing obvious. But enough to make him question. Enough to make him overthink every glance, every conversation, every casual statement I made became a minefield for him. I leaned back in my chair, letting my eyes wander over him from across the office. The confident mask he wore like armor was dented, cracks forming, invisible to anyone else, but crystal clear to me. I felt the subtle, delicious satisfaction of vindication, not triumph over others, not malicious, just balance, justice. He thinks he's untouchable, he thinks I'm harmless. He steps wrong. The thrill was intoxicating. My pulse raced, fingers tapping against my desk, the invisible power humming beneath my skin. The quiet, invisible strikes, the ones no one else could see, felt sharper than any confrontation, colder than any rage. I whispered under my breath, one step, one perfect strike at a time. And he didn't set no. Not yet. But he will. And when he does, every casual insult, every judgment, every time he dismissed me, he'll feel it. Not in words, not in public, but in quiet, piercing realization. The first strike was subtle, silent, beautifully invisible. I smiled faintly, sipping my coffee. The plan was in motion, the pieces were moving, and for the first time in years, I felt untouchable. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice, calculated, precise, inevitable. And it had only just begun. The whispers started quietly, almost nothing, a glance here, a pause in conversation there. Subtle, harmless, nothing anyone could prove. I noticed it first, colleagues exchanging looks, small, knowing smirks, phones tucked under desks, emails glanced at twice. I sipped my coffee watching, calm, patient, invisible. Have you seen the latest pay stubs? Someone murmured across the room. My brother froze mid-step, eyes darting. He smiled too quickly, like it would cover the tension, but it didn't, not for long. I leaned back in my chair, fingers drumming lightly. The chaos had begun. By mid-morning, the quiet whispers became impossible to ignore. Hushed discussions, emails marked urgent, a subtle shuffling of papers whenever he walked by. He tried to maintain the armor of arrogance, but cracks were showing, small ones, telling ones. He cornered me by the coffee machine later, voice low, controlled, but trembling under the surface. What did you do? I didn't answer immediately. I let him fidget, let the tension build, let the weight of his own words and actions settle in like a shadow. What do you mean? What did I do? I finally said, voice light, almost innocent. I didn't do anything, you are imagining things. He scowled, trying to mask panic with anger. Stop playing games. I know something happened. Everyone sits talking. I hear it, I see it, don't act clueless. I smiled faintly, letting it hang in the air. Curious, I said softly, how quickly rumors can spread, and how easily people notice inconsistencies. He leaned closer, chest tight, voice harsher. You've gone too far this time. This is personal. You can I interrupted. Calm, cold. Oh, I can. And I did. Legally, subtly, ethically. But impactful enough that, maybe now you understand what it feels like to be judged unfairly, to be exposed, to be underestimated. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Words faltered, panic bubbled under the surface, threatening to crack his carefully constructed confidence. I let silence do the work, let the irony of his arrogance, his greed, and his dismissive smirks from years past slowly eat at him, let him realize that he was the one vulnerable now. I don't understand, he stammered. Numbers, reports, pay stubs. How? Who told? I shook my head slowly. You really don't need to know. The truth? It's more about what you feel than what you see, and I think you're starting to feel it. He backed away slightly, shaking, trying to collect composure. You can do this. This isn't fair. You fair? I cut in, voice sharp. You think life was fair to me? All those times you sneered at my ambition, at my work, at my effort. All those years I was called the lucky Sep, while you were practical Sep. I never forgot. And now. I paused, letting the weight settle. Now you feel a fraction of that judgment, that exposure, that vulnerability. You feel it, don't you? He swallowed hard, lips pressed tight. He wanted to lash out, to accuse, to deflect, but every glance around the office reminded him, every subtle look from colleagues, every paused conversation, every muffled whisper, it was there. I could see the disbelief in his eyes, the humiliation, the rising panic, so quiet, so sharp, it was intoxicating. You can be serious, he muttered, voice cracking. This is insane. I leaned forward slightly, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. Serious? Isep never been more serious. And yet, Usep the one who underestimated me. Usep the one who dismissed my worth, every single time. Isep am just reminding you. He staggered back, chest heaving, arms flailing slightly. This can spit be real. People one spit believe it. You can spit. I let him flounder. Let him feel the weight of exposure without interference. Let him grapple with the irony years of arrogance, self-righteousness, and dismissive superiority, now mirrored back in whispers, glances, and the quiet certainty that someone had finally seen it all. I felt my chest loosen slightly, relief, not loud, not celebratory, but deep, silent justice, poetic, patient, precise. You Seb had your fun, he said finally, voice trembling, trying to salvage pride. But this ends now. You hear me? I tilted my head. Calm. Ends? No. It only begins. But for now, watch, listen, feel, let it sink in. You still remember this moment. He glared, fists clenched, but even that was a crack. Even that was confirmation. My strike had landed. Perfectly. Subtle, quiet, untraceable yet undeniable. I watched him retreat to his office, shoulders tense, eyes darting, and I felt it. The release. The power. The balance shifting finally, silently, in my favor. The office hummed around me, conversations resumed, phones pinged, life went on, but I knew the undercurrent, the tension, the chaos. I had started it and he could feel it every second. I whispered under my breath, to no one but myself. This is justice. Silent, precise, inevitable, and it's only the beginning. I leaned back, fingers intertwined, heart still racing. The fallout was beautiful, perfect. He had underestimated me for years. Dismissed me, judged me, mocked me. Now he would remember. Every glance, every whisper, every moment of doubt. And I would watch. Patiently, carefully, cinematically. Because silent justice is the sweetest. And the game has just begun. The office was quiet. Too quiet. The storm had passed, leaving a residue of tension that still hummed in the air. I sat back in my chair, letting my fingers trace the edge of my desk. It had consumed me. Every waking moment, every thought, every calculation. I realized then, revenge wasn't just about pay, bonuses, or numbers. It wasn't about proving him wrong to anyone else. It was about reclaiming myself. I whispered to the empty office, almost a confession. This was never about him. It was about me. A chair creaked behind me. Liam, he leaned casually against the doorway, arms crossed, a faint smirk playing on his lips. You look lighter, he said quietly. Like you survived something. I laughed softly. Survived? Maybe? Or maybe I just stopped letting him define me. All those years, his smirks, his comments, his judgment, I carried them like chains. And now, I paused, taking a slow breath. Now I've broken them myself. He raised an eyebrow. And him? I smiled, a faint, cold smile. Karma has its way. He shall remember me. Every glance, every whisper, every doubt he feels. But I don't need to crush him completely. I just needed him to feel a fraction of what he made me feel. Liam nodded, as if reading the exact shift in my mind. Yusef changed. That sep's clear. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights flickered, reflecting a calm I hadn't known in years. Isep learned patience, I said softly. Strategy, subtlety, waiting, watching, letting the pieces fall where they may. A memory surfaced. My brother laughing at my ambition, dismissing my work, calling me lucky while he polished his own victories. A quiet rage rose inside me, sharp and cold, but this time it was controlled. Focused, constructive, not blind. I whispered under my breath, more to myself than anyone else. I am not small, I am not insignificant. I am seen, I am capable, and I am free. He appeared in my mind again, walking through the office, faltering under the invisible pressure I had orchestrated. The panic in his eyes, the tiny cracks in his confident facade. It wasn't triumph, I felt. It was clarity. Justice had unfolded quietly, naturally. Liam tilted his head. So, what now? I smiled faintly. Now I rise. Not on his fall, but on my own strength. I don't need to step on him to climb. I just needed to show myself what I step capable of, that I can move in silence, with patience, and still win. You're empowered, he said, almost in awe. Yes, I whispered, empowered and dangerous, in a quiet way. Not because I hurt others, but because I protect myself. I guard my dignity, my worth, and anyone who doubts it will see it, eventually. I closed my eyes, reflecting on the transformation. Years of being dismissed, underestimated, ignored, had forged me. Not bitterness, exactly. Not hatred, but resilience. Strategy. Silent strength. You are different now, Liam said. You don't set just react. You anticipate. You control. I nodded slowly. I learned the power of stillness, of patience, of subtlety. Every step I took, every calculated move, it wasn't just revenge. It was reclaiming me. I opened my eyes, staring out the window at the city lights shimmering below. Life continued. People laughed. Phones rang, emails pinged, but inside me, calm, steely, unshakable. My brother would remember. That was enough. He would remember my strength, my patience, my capacity to rise without destroying him, to claim dignity silently, invisibly, to show power without noise. I whispered again softly, almost reverently, I don't need to win over anyone else. I needed to win over myself. And I did. The quiet rage that had fueled me through the storm still lingered, but it was refined now, tamed. A weapon, but one I no longer needed to brandish recklessly. I imagined the years ahead, every decision measured, every action deliberate. No need for public spectacles. No need for dramatics. The proof of my transformation lived in me, radiating quietly, unmistakably. You have done more than revenge, Liam said softly. You have changed. Yes, I agreed, and that change is permanent. I am no longer small, no longer overlooked, no longer a footnote in someone else's story. I am the author of my own life, and he will always remember that. I leaned back in my chair, letting the night settle around me. The tension in the office, the whispers, the subtle chaos, they had served their purpose, but I had moved beyond them, beyond him, beyond what he could ever touch. The storm had passed. I had survived it, and in surviving I discovered something far more powerful than revenge. I had discovered myself. And that was unstoppable. Weeks passed. I watched him from across the room, careful not to make it obvious. The confident stride I used to envy was gone. His words stumbled. Decisions lingered too long before leaving his lips. Hesitation hung around him like a shadow. He approached my desk one morning, hands in pockets, eyes flicking everywhere but at me. Hey, I wanted to say something. I looked up slowly, neutral. Yes? He swallowed, grimacing. About before the comments, the pay, I guess I misjudged you. I raised an eyebrow, faint smile playing on my lips. You misjudged me? That's putting it lightly. He nodded quickly, flustered. I know. I didn't realize. Not until, well, until everything came out. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. Let him feel it. The weight of years of dismissal, the subtle, invisible judgments, now reflected back on him. It's enlightening, isn't it? To finally see what it feels like. He flinched, the corner of his mouth twitching. Yeah, it is. I never meant to. Never meant to? I interrupted softly. You never meant to notice, never meant to respect, never meant to understand. That's been the problem all along. He glanced down, shame tightening his shoulders. I thought I was right. Practical, smart. I thought I was better. But now? I smiled faintly, almost tenderly. Now you felt a glimpse of what it like to be underestimated, to have someone quietly orchestrate truth around you, to see your pride crumble silently. That justice, subtle and exact. His eyes flicked up, meeting mine for a fraction of a second before darting away. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, truly. I tilted my head. Apologies. They are not necessary, not anymore. What mattered was for you to feel it, to recognize your arrogance, to reckon with underestimating me. He shifted awkwardly. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't see it. And yet, I said softly, voice barely above a whisper, you did. Every sneer, every dismissal, every casual judgment. It mattered. It shaped me. But it also taught me patience, strategy, subtle power. So yes, you hurt me, but you also made this possible. He exhaled, shoulders sagging. I see that now. And I hate that I didn't see it sooner. I underestimated you completely. I let a faint laugh escape, quiet but sharp. You did, and now you remember it. Not because of shouting, not because of confrontation, not because of drama, but because of quiet, psychological truth. The kind that pierces pride, leaves no scars, but leaves understanding. His face tightened, guilt mixing with recognition. It it's hard. Pride, it doesn't like being questioned. And of realizing how much I was wrong. I leaned forward slightly. Good. Let that linger. Let it sink. Let it remind you that underestimating someone can be quietly devastating. And sometimes, justice isn't loud. It's invisible, subtle, personal. He nodded slowly, voice low. I still remember this. Every time, I once make the same mistake again. I understand now. I watched him struggle with pride, with vulnerability, his hesitation, the awkward pauses, the carefully chosen words. They were more satisfying than any victory I could have staged. This was poetic, quiet, deeply personal. I don't need you to grovel, I said softly. Just know the gravity of underestimating someone. Let it teach you. Let it change you. He exhaled, looking down at his hands. I will. I promise. I nodded once. Subtle, controlled. Nothing flashy. Nothing public. The satisfaction was internal, a quiet surge of release. Weeks of patience, observation, strategy, and subtle manipulation had paid off. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't exposed him with dramatics. I didn't need to. The psychological truth, the quiet unraveling of pride, had been infinitely more effective. I whispered under my breath, almost to myself. This is justice, quiet, exact, irrevocable. He turned to leave, hesitating at the doorway. I could see it, the lingering recognition of his own failings, the awareness of his arrogance, the invisible marks I had left. And I felt it too. The satisfaction of balance restored, the dignity reclaimed, the subtle, quiet power that came not from destroying him entirely, but from orchestrating a truth he could feel, live with, and never forget. I watched him go, shoulders hunched, pride tempered, lessons quietly learned. And I smiled. Justice doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's enough to leave someone to their own regret. And that is perfect. The house smelled of roasted chicken and simmering vegetables. Family chatter filled the air, polite smiles, quiet laughter, but under it all, tension simmered like a hidden flame. I sat at the head of the table, watching my brother across from me. His posture was rigid, shoulders tight, hands clenched around the napkin. He was trying to act normal, but I could see it. The hesitation in his eyes, the flicker of awareness that I had changed the game. Mom placed a plate in front of him. Eat, she said softly, unaware of the storm brewing in the room. I pushed my food around my plate, letting the silence stretch. Finally I spoke. Calm, steady, deliberate. We need to talk. He looked up, confusion mingling with defensiveness. About what? I leaned back, hands folded. About truth, about honesty, about the years of judgment you passed without realizing the damage it caused. His fork paused midair. I do understand. What are you talking about? I let my voice remain calm, measured, about underestimating me, about dismissing my effort, my ambition, my work, about calling me overpaid, sipturi the lucky, sipturism dej, sipturism outthinking. I didn't sipturism recognition while you collected yours without thought. He flushed. That sip's not fair. I was never trying to. Fair? I cut in, soft but sharp. You never cared about fair. You cared about being right, about looking better, about your pride. And now, I paused, letting the words sink. You see the cracks. Mom frowned, looking between us. What cracks? I let a faint smile slip. The ones you ignored in yourself, the ones your arrogance has created. The ones everyone could see, except you until now. He opened his mouth, stammering. I don't understand. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to notice. You didn't mean to respect. You didn't mean to see the effort I poured into my work, into my life, but you should have. He shifted in his chair, tension rippling through him. I didn't know. I wasn't thinking. Exactly, I said softly, letting calmness be my weapon. You weren't thinking, and yet you judged. You dismissed. You belittled, quietly, every day for years. Mom Sep's eyes widened. All this you saying this now? Yes, I said, steady, unwavering, because it needed to be said, not to shame him. Not to humiliate, but to expose the truth calmly. So everyone, him included, could see the impact of his arrogance, the quiet injustice he Seps caused. He swallowed hard, unable to meet my gaze. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I replied. You need to listen, to feel it, to understand it, and maybe finally to remember that underestimating someone has consequences. His hands tightened around the napkin. I can believe. I never thought. Exactly, I said, voice soft but cutting. You never thought, and it's why you star here, unraveling quietly while the rest of us watch. Calm, unshaken, undisturbed, because I've taken control of my worth, my dignity, my voice. He flinched, a small involuntary reaction. I saw the pride crack, the confidence falter. That's all I needed, that tiny fissure in his armor, that quiet vulnerability that everyone could now see. Mom looked at him, confused. Is he okay? I smiled faintly. He realizing, slowly, that his arrogance had a cost. Not just for him but for me, and now, he facing it. He looked down at his plate, hands trembling slightly. I underestimated you. I underestimated you. I nodded once. Quiet, controlled, it understood. Not fully forgiven, perhaps, but acknowledged, and that acknowledgement, seeing him face his own mistakes, is enough. He glanced up, still defensive, still trying to protect what little pride remained. You are calm, too calm. How? I cut him off gently. Calmness is power. Not rage, not shouting, not humiliation. Calm, quiet, steady, observed. And in that calm, truth speaks louder than any accusation. He exhaled, a mix of frustration and recognition. I see that now. I can take it back. But I understand. I leaned back, satisfied. The victory wasn't loud. There was no drama, no spectacle, just the undeniable quiet power of truth exposed, arrogance humbled and dignity reclaimed. Mom looked between us, confused, but the tension in the room shifted. Everyone sensed it. The silent shift, the subtle realignment of respect. I whispered under my breath, barely audible, this is the victory, silent, unmistakable, undeniable. He remained seated, shrinking slightly in his chair, and I realized this was freedom, not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been dismissed or underestimated. The table hummed with quiet conversation, the clatter of cutlery, polite laughter, but I sat, calm, powerful, respected, finally completely free. No scream, no confrontation, just truth, quiet, exact, permanent. And that was enough. Months had passed, the tension hadn't vanished completely. My brother still walked around the edges of conversations, careful, deliberate, wary, but I no longer noticed it the way I used to. I sipped my morning coffee, watching the city wake from my window. Light spilled across the apartment, golden and forgiving. I felt something I hadn't in years. Calm, control, power, not loud, not flashy, but steady, unshakable. Liam dropped by, casual as always. You look lighter, he said, like the storm never touched you. I smiled faintly. It did touch me, but I didn't let it break me. I let it teach me. He tilted his head, and him. I laughed softly, almost to myself. He careful, humble, not the same man who once thought he could dismiss me with a word. But that's not what matters anymore. What matters is me, my dignity, my worth, my ability to move through life without carrying the weight of his judgment. A memory surfaced. Years of belittling comments, silent dismissals, sneers at my ambition. I could still feel the sting, but it no longer held me hostage. I had transformed the pain into something sharp, precise, and mine. I whispered under my breath, more a statement than a thought. I am not small, I am seen. I am capable. And I am free. Mom called from the other room. Dinner seps, ready. I rose, letting the sound carry me back to the present. Walking through the apartment, I noticed the small victories, the stability I had built, the quiet satisfaction of integrity maintained, the strength cultivated. Life felt different. Lighter, even. Liam followed, curious. Do you think about all of it? All of it, I echoed. Every word, every jab, every slight. Yes. I nodded slowly. Sometimes, but it doesn't bind me anymore. I don't replay his comments to hurt myself. I replay them to understand what I've overcome, to see how far I've come. Revenge wasn't about hatred. It was about reclaiming myself, about subtle dominance, quiet authority over my own life. About subtle dominance, quiet authority over my own life. He smiled. You sound unstoppable. I let the word settle. Unshakable. That seps better. I walked to the balcony, leaning against the railing. The city stretched before me, vast, infinite. I realized how much power I held, not in others' perception, but in my own. I had taken control, rewritten the story that had once trapped me in silence and doubt. A memory of my brother flickered, his hesitation, the cracks in his pride, the quiet moments of recognition. I didn't feel triumph, exactly, not cruelty. Just the serene satisfaction of justice served without spectacle. Do you miss the fight? Liam asked. No, I said firmly. The fight was necessary to find this, but I don't just need conflict anymore. I have peace. I have clarity, and that sep's stronger than revenge ever could be. I looked down at the streets below, people moving, rushing, unaware of the battles we carry within. I whispered to myself, softly, almost reverently, I am stronger. I am wiser. I am free. Months of patience, strategy, and careful observation had transformed me. The tension with my brother was a reminder of history, not a burden. I could exist in the same space, breathe the same air, without being tethered to his judgments. I closed my eyes, letting the city sounds filter in. Cars honked, conversations floated up. The ordinary rhythm of life continued, indifferent to grudges, and I felt extraordinary. Because I had endured, adapted, and emerged. Liam leaned against the doorway, watching me silently. You've changed, he said. Yes, I agreed. Not because he fell. Not because of what I did to him, but because of what I did for me. I turned pain into power, humiliation into clarity, anger into calm, and now, I can finally breathe. I opened my eyes, looking at the horizon. Life awaited. Challenges would come. People would doubt. But I was ready. Unflinching, independent. A force forged from subtle victories, patience, and self-respect. I whispered again, softly, to no one in particular. This story ends here. My story. My triumph. My transformation. Unshakable. Complete. I turned back inside, leaving the balcony, the city, the past behind, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. The weight of judgment, betrayal, and resentment no longer existed. It had been transformed, refined, and reclaimed. The ashes of the past were mine to rise from, and I had risen. And I would continue to rise. Always,